I'm Marcus Thompson, 42, and I thought I had the perfect marriage with my wife Sarah after 15 years together. Last Tuesday, she came home with tears of joy streaming down her face, telling me she was pregnant with our baby. Should have been ecstatic, but instead, my blood ran cold. You see, 10 years ago, after our second miscarriage nearly destroyed us both, I made a decision that would save our marriage from further heartbreak. I got a vasectomy. Sarah knew about it, supported it, even drove me to the appointment. So when she stood there, radiant and glowing, talking about our miracle baby, I quietly walked to my office and pulled out the medical records that would shatter everything. The documents that proved this baby couldn't possibly be mine. If you've ever discovered a betrayal that changed your entire world, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories of truth revealed. Sarah and I met in college, too ambitious. Kids from middle-class families who dreamed of building something beautiful together. She was studying marketing. I was pursuing engineering, and we spent countless nights in the library talking about our future. We married young at 25, full of hope and plans that seemed so simple then. Our wedding album sits on the mantel. In our living room, a leather-bound testament to what everyone called the perfect couple. Sarah looks radiant in her flowing white dress, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, and I'm beaming beside her in my navy suit. We're surrounded by family and friends, all of them convinced we'd found something special. Maybe we had once. The first few years were everything we'd imagined. We bought our starter home, a charming 2-bedroom colonial with blue shutters and a white picket fence. Sarah landed a job at Morrison Marketing Group, while I worked my way up at Henderson Engineering. We talked constantly about kids, planning, how we'd convert the spare bedroom into a nursery, picking out names during lazy Sunday mornings in bed, but life had other plans. Sarah's first miscarriage happened at 8 weeks, just when we'd started telling people. Second came at 12 weeks, after we'd already picked out a crib. Loss carved something out of us, leaving us hollow and desperate. Sarah blamed herself, spending hours researching fertility treatments and supplements. I blamed the universe, God, anyone who would listen to my rage, the fertility specialist. Dr. Chen ran every test imaginable. Sarah's results came back normal. Mine showed low sperm count and poor motility, but nothing that couldn't be overcome with time and treatment. We tried for 3 more years medications, procedures, scheduled intimacy that felt more clinical than romantic. Our marriage became centered around ovulation windows and pregnancy tests. Hope and disappointment cycling like seasons. That's when Dr. Patterson, my urologist, suggested the vasectomy during one of our most devastating periods. Sarah had just lost another pregnancy at 6 weeks, and we were both emotionally shattered. Sometimes, he said gently, removing the pressure can save a marriage. You can always reverse it later if you change your minds. Sarah held my hand in that sterile office, tears streaming down her face as she nodded. Maybe we're meant to be just us, she whispered. Maybe that's enough. We decided together that our marriage was more important than the dream of biological children. We could adopt later, we told ourselves. We could be happy without kids. The vasectomy was simple, done on a Friday morning in Dr. Patterson's outpatient clinic. Sarah drove me home, helped me ice the incision, and brought me soup while I recovered on the couch. We spent that weekend talking about our future without children, planning trips we'd never been able to take, dreaming of a life focused solely on each other, and for a while it worked. The pressure lifted, our intimacy returned, and we remembered why we'd fallen in love in the first place. Last Tuesday started like any other day. I was in my home office reviewing blueprints for a new commercial project when I heard Sarah's car pull into the driveway. She usually came home around 6, but it was only 4:30. I glanced out the window and saw her sitting in the driver's seat, her head tilted back against the headrest, a smile playing at her lips. When she walked through the front door, there was something different about her. She moved with a lightness I hadn't seen in years, almost floating across the hardwood floor. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright with unshed tears, and she was clutching something in her closed fist. "Marcus," she called out, her voice trembling. With emotion, "Can you come here? I have something incredible to tell you." I set down my pencil and walked to the living room, where she stood in front of our wedding photos, that mysterious smile growing wider. She looked so beautiful in that moment, radiant in a way that made my chest tighten with an emotion I couldn't quite name. "What is it?" I asked, moving closer. "You look like you're about to burst," she laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. I am about to burst. Marcus, sit down, please. I settled onto our burgundy couch, the same one we'd picked. Out together, 8 years ago? Sarah remained standing, swaying slightly as if she couldn't contain her excitement. She opened her fist and held out a small plastic stick. I'm pregnant, she whispered, then louder. Marcus, I'm pregnant with your baby. The pregnancy test showed 2 clear pink lines. I stared at it, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. Sarah's face was luminous, tears streaming down her cheeks as she waited for my reaction. This should have been the moment we'd dreamed of for so many years. It's the miracle we'd given up hoping for. Instead, I felt a cold dread settling in my stomach. How was that possible? I asked quietly, still staring at the test. Sarah's laugh was breathless, giddy. I don't know, but it happened. Dr. Patterson always said vasectomies weren't 100% effective, right? Sometimes the tubes can reconnect themselves. It's rare, but it happens. We're having a miracle baby, Marcus. She knelt beside the couch, taking my hands in hers. Her skin was warm, soft, familiar. I know it's shocking. I couldn't believe it. Myself, when I took the test at work, I actually took 3 more just to be sure, but it's real. We're going to be parents. I nodded slowly, forcing a smile that felt like broken glass. That's amazing, Sarah. Really amazing. But even as I said the words, my engineer's mind was calculating probabilities. Vasectomy failure rates, recanalization statistics, the odds of spontaneous reconnection after 10 years. The numbers didn't add up. Sarah threw her arms around me, burying her face in my neck. I held her, breathing in the vanilla scent of her shampoo, feeling her happy tears dampen my shirt. She pulled back to look at me, her green eyes shining. I already called Dr. Martinez to schedule our first appointment. She wants to see me next week for blood work and an ultrasound. Can you believe we're finally going to hear our baby's heartbeat? The rest of the evening passed in a blur of Sarah's excited chatter about nursery colors and baby names. She pulled out her phone to research cribs and strollers, talking animatedly about converting my home office into the nursery we'd always planned. I made appropriate responses, asked the right questions, but inside, terrible certainty was growing. After Sarah fell asleep that night, I lay staring at the ceiling, listening to her peaceful breathing beside me. In the darkness, I made a decision that would change everything. I waited until Sarah left for work the next morning before calling Dr. Patterson's office. My hands shook as I dialed the number I'd memorized 10 years ago. The same number that had connected me to answers I desperately needed then. Now I needed answers again, but these would be far more devastating. Henderson Urology. This is Janet speaking. Hi, Janet. This is Marcus Thompson. I need to speak with Dr. Patterson as soon as possible. It's urgent. Janet had been Dr. Patterson's nurse for over 15 years. She remembered me, remembered the scared young man who'd come in for a vasectomy after too many pregnancy losses. Of course, Marcus. Let me see if he's available. Dr. Patterson came on the line within minutes. His voice was warm, professional, tinged with the slight southern accent that had always been comforting. Marcus, good to hear from you. What can I do for you? Dr. Patterson, I need you to check my records from the vasectomy. My wife says she's pregnant, and she thinks it's because the tubes reconnected themselves. Is that possible after 10 years? There was a pause, the sound of papers rustling. Let me pull up your file. I remember your case well. You were one of my younger patients, and the procedure went perfectly. No complications, clean healing, follow-up tests, all showed complete sterility. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. But could they have reconnected? Could I be fertile again? Marcus, I need to be completely honest with you. While recanalization can occur, it's extremely rare. And it typically happens within the first few months after surgery, not a decade later. Your follow-up sperm counts were 0 motile sperm, 0 viable sperm. The chances of natural fertility returning after 10 years are essentially non-existent. The words hit me like a physical blow. I sank into my desk chair, staring at the framed photo of Sarah and me on our anniversary last year. We looked so happy, so trusting, so naive. Are you certain? I asked, though I already knew the answer, certain as medical science allows me to be. Marcus, if your wife is pregnant, if you haven't had a vasectomy reversal that I'm unaware of, then biologically speaking, you cannot be the father. The room felt like it was spinning. I gripped the edge of my desk, focusing on Dr. Patterson's steady voice as he continued, I'm sorry to be the bearer of such difficult news. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but I think you should come in for a current sperm analysis just to be absolutely certain. We can have you in this afternoon if you'd like." "Yes," I managed. "Yes, I need to know for sure. Janet will work you into the schedule. Marcus, I want you to know that whatever you're going through, we're here to support you. This kind of situation requires careful handling, both medically and emotionally." After hanging up, I sat in my office for a long time, staring at nothing. The engineering drawings on my desk might as well have been written in ancient hieroglyphics. My mind kept circling back to Sarah's face the night before, the pure joy radiating from her as she talked about our miracle baby. Our miracle baby that couldn't possibly be mine. I arrived at Dr. Patterson's office that afternoon with a baseball cap pulled low over my eyes, paranoid that someone might recognize me. The waiting room was exactly as I remembered: beige walls, outdated magazines, the faint smell of disinfectant. Janet smiled sympathetically as she called me back. The sample collection was quick and clinical. Dr. Patterson explained they would rush the analysis and have results within a few hours. I waited in his office, studying the diplomas on his wall, the family photos on his desk, anything to avoid thinking about what the test would confirm. When he returned with the results, his expression told me everything I needed to know before he spoke a word. "Marcus, your sperm count is 0. No viable sperm whatsoever. The vasectomy remains completely effective." He sat across from me, his hands folded. "I'm truly sorry." I nodded, feeling strangely calm now that the uncertainty was over. "Thank you for being honest with me. What will you do now?" I looked out the window at the parking lot where my car sat next to Sarah's preferred coffee shop. She'd probably stopped there this morning, glowing with pregnancy hormones and secret guilt, buying her usual vanilla latte while carrying another man's child. "I need to figure out the truth," I said finally. "All of it." That evening, I watched Sarah with new eyes. She was curled up on the couch, laptop open to a baby registry website, adding items with the enthusiasm of someone planning the future. Every few minutes, she'd call out to me about cribs or changing tables, her voice bright with anticipation. I made appropriate responses from the kitchen while preparing dinner, but my mind was elsewhere, cataloging details I'd previously ignored. Her phone buzzed constantly throughout the evening. Each time, she'd glance at the screen with a small smile before setting it aside without responding. When I asked who was texting, she waved dismissively. "Just work stuff. You know how it is." But I'd been married to Sarah for 15 years. I knew her work patterns, her communication habits, the way she prioritized emails and messages. This was different, more personal, more secretive. After she went to bed, I stayed up under the pretense of finishing project plans. Instead, I began my investigation. Sarah had always been trusting with passwords. We used each other's phones interchangeably, shared laptop access, kept joint accounts for everything. That openness which had once symbolized our trust now became the tool for uncovering her betrayal. Her laptop was password protected, but I knew it by heart. Our wedding anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me as I typed the date that had once represented our eternal commitment. The desktop loaded, showing a background photo of us. From our trip to Ireland last summer, we looked genuinely happy, arms wrapped around each other on the cliffs of Maher. I wondered if she was already cheating then. That smile was tinged with guilt I'd been too blind to see. I started with her browser history, to recent searches. Painted a picture of a woman preparing for motherhood. Prenatal vitamins, pregnancy symptoms, baby gear reviews. But buried deeper were searches that made my blood run cold. How accurate are paternity tests? When is the earliest you can determine paternity? Signs of vasectomy failure. She'd been researching the lies she planned to tell me. Her email revealed more troubling patterns, or correspondence that seemed normal on the surface, but contained subtle intimacies, inside jokes. References to conversations I hadn't been part of, schedule coordination that had nothing to do with official projects. The name Derek Morrison appeared frequently, usually as part of group emails, but sometimes in individual threads that had been carefully deleted. I cross-referenced Derek's name with Sarah's calendar app. Her official work schedule showed normal business hours, but her personal calendar told a different story. Late meetings that weren't reflected in her work emails, lunch appointments that lasted 3 hours, weekend work sessions at times when I knew her office building was closed. The pieces were falling into place. It's creating a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. Sarah's social media accounts were more carefully curated, but even there, cracks showed in her perfect facade. Her Instagram posts from the past 6 months showed subtle changes, new restaurants I'd never been to, coffee shops in parts of town she had no business visiting, photos taken at angles that suggested someone else was holding the camera. Her location tags were inconsistent with the stories she'd told me about her daily activities. Facebook Messenger revealed the most damning evidence. While the actual message threads with Derek had been deleted, the search history remained. His name appeared dozens of times over the past 8 months, with increasing frequency in recent weeks. The timing coincided perfectly with what would have been the conception period of her pregnancy. I spent hours that night documenting everything, taking screenshots, saving files to a private cloud account. The engineer in me needed systematic proof, irrefutable evidence before taking any action. But the husband in me was breaking apart with each new discovery. By 3 in the morning, I had constructed a timeline that painted a clear picture of betrayal. The affair had likely started 8 months ago, around the time Sarah began working on what she described as a major new client project. The pregnancy would have occurred during a business conference she'd attended in Chicago. Conference I now realized Derek had also attended. I climbed into bed beside my sleeping wife, careful not to wake her. She murmured my name and curled closer, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. In the darkness, listening to her peaceful breathing, I wondered how long she'd been planning this deception. Did she hope the baby would look like me? Was she prepared to carry this lie for the rest of our lives? It's the most painful question of all. Had she ever planned to leave me for Derek? Or was I simply the convenient husband who would raise another man's child without ever knowing the truth? I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling and planning my next moves. The next morning, while Sarah hummed in the shower, I retreated to my office and opened the box I hadn't touched in a decade. Hidden beneath old tax returns and insurance papers was the hospital bracelet from my vasectomy day, still crisp and white with my name printed in black letters. Marcus Thompson, D.O.B., March 15, 82, procedure, bilateral vasectomy. I held the thin plastic band, remembering that Friday morning with painful clarity. Sarah had taken the day off work to drive me to the outpatient clinic. She'd been nervous, more nervous than I was, fidgeting with her purse strap and asking the nurse questions about recovery time and potential complications. "Are you sure about this?" she'd asked one final time as I changed into the hospital gown. "We don't have to do this today. We could wait longer, try other options." But I'd been sure. After years of fertility treatments, scheduled intimacy, and devastating losses, I was exhausted. We both were. The constant cycle of hope and disappointment had turned our marriage into a clinical exercise, our bedroom into a medical facility. We needed to break free from the obsession with conception that was slowly killing our relationship. "I'm sure," I'd told her, taking her hand. "We'll be okay. We'll be better than okay." Dr. Patterson had been gentle but thorough in explaining the procedure. Local anesthesia, small incisions, cutting and sealing the VA's deferens to prevent sperm from mixing with semen during ejaculation. Simple in theory, life-changing in practice. Sarah had held my hand during the procedure, even though she didn't need to be in the room. I remember looking up at her face, seeing her own pain reflected. In her eyes, she was grieving too, mourning the biological children we'd never have, the genetic legacy that would end with us. The recovery had been surprisingly easy. Sarah pampered me for days, bringing ice packs and pain medication, cooking my favorite meals, curling up beside me on the couch to watch movies, talked about our future without children, making plans for travel and career advancement, discussing how we'd redirect the love we'd intended for children back toward each other. "Maybe this is what we needed," Sarah had said on the Sunday after my surgery. We were sitting in our backyard watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Maybe we got so focused on making a baby that we forgot how to just be us," I'd agreed, pulling her closer. "We're enough. We've always been enough." For the first time in years, our physical relationship had returned to something natural and spontaneous. Without the pressure of conception, without the clinical timing and position strategies, we rediscovered intimacy. We made love because we wanted to, not because an ovulation predictor told us to. The follow-up appointments had confirmed the success of the procedure. 3 months post-surgery, my sperm count was 0. 6 months later, still 0. Dr. Patterson had been pleased with the results, declaring the vasectomy completely effective. Sarah had been there for those appointments too, nodding along as the doctor explained that we could now have sexual relations without any risk of pregnancy. "How does it feel to have that certainty?" Dr. Patterson had asked during our final follow-up.
"Liberating,"
I'd answered honestly. Sarah had squeezed my hand in agreement. We'd celebrated that night, going to our favorite restaurant and toasting to our future. Sarah had worn the blue dress I loved, the one that brought out her eyes, and she'd been radiant, with relief and happiness. We talked about taking a second honeymoon, maybe to Europe, now that we could travel without worrying about pregnancy complications or fertility treatments. Those had been good years that followed. We'd grown closer, more intimate, more focused on building a life together rather than trying to create new life. We'd taken those European trips, renovated our house, advanced in our careers. Sarah had seemed genuinely content, fulfilled by our partnership in a way she hadn't been during our fertility struggles, which made her current betrayal even more devastating. She'd had everything she'd claimed to want a loving marriage: financial security, freedom from the pressure of parenthood. Yet she'd thrown it all away for an affair with a colleague. Now she was trying to trap me into raising another man's child. I tucked the hospital bracelet back into the box, but not before taking a photo of it with my phone. Evidence for what was coming. Proof of the promise we'd made to each other. The sacrifice I'd made for our marriage. The trust she was now destroying. Sarah's voice carried from the bedroom asking if I wanted coffee. I called back that I'd make it myself, needing a few more minutes to compose myself before facing her bright morning enthusiasm about our miracle baby. As I walked to the kitchen, I realized that the man who'd gotten that vasectomy 10 years ago had been naive about many things. He'd believed that love conquered all, that trust was unbreakable, that the woman he'd married would honor their vows through any challenge. That man was gone. In his place was someone harder, more calculating. Someone who understood that sometimes the people you love most are capable of the deepest betrayals. While Sarah chatted excitedly over breakfast about converting my home office into a nursery, I nodded and made appropriate sounds while mentally planning my next investigative steps. She showed me Pinterest boards she'd created overnight, full of cribs and changing tables and wall decorations in soft yellows and greens. "Since we don't know if it's a boy or girl yet, I thought we'd go with a nature theme," she said, scrolling through images of tree decals and woodland creatures. "What do you think of this color scheme?" "It's beautiful," I replied, though the words tasted like ash. Very thoughtful. After she left for work, I returned to my digital investigation with renewed focus. Sarah's laptop had yielded some clues, but I needed more concrete evidence. Her phone would be the real treasure trove, but she kept it with her constantly. I needed another approach. I remembered that Sarah had linked her social media accounts to automatically back up photos to our shared cloud storage. She'd done it years ago and likely forgotten about it, given how rarely we accessed the family account. I logged in with mounting anticipation and horror. The photo backups told a story Sarah hadn't intended to preserve. Mixed in with legitimate work photos and innocent selfies were images that painted a clear picture of her double life. Restaurant photos that showed two place settings when she'd told me she was eating alone. Selfies taken in hotel rooms during supposed business trips. Most damning of all, photos that included Derek Morrison's reflection in windows and mirrors atoll. Dark-haired man with an easy smile and expensive suits. I screenshot everything, organizing the evidence chronologically. The progression was heartbreaking to watch, innocent work photos gradually becoming more intimate. The backgrounds shifting from office settings to romantic restaurants to hotel rooms. Sarah's expression in the photos changed too, becoming more relaxed and genuinely happy in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in months. One photo in particular made me nauseous. It was taken in what was clearly a hotel bathroom mirror showing Sarah in a silk robe that I'd never seen before. Her hair was tousled, her skin glowing, and she had the unmistakable look of a woman who'd just been thoroughly satisfied. The timestamp placed it 3 months ago, during what she'd told me was a boring regional conference. Her Instagram account, which I'd always had access to, revealed more subtle clues when I knew what to look for. The work lunch photos showed expensive restaurants I knew her company didn't have budget for. The team-building events included people who didn't appear to work at her company. The late night at the office posts were geotagged at locations nowhere near Morrison Marketing. Groot, but it was her private messages that provided the smoking gun. While she'd been careful to delete her conversations with Derek, she'd forgotten about her Instagram direct messages with her best friend, Lisa. The conversation history painted a picture of a woman deep in an affair and struggling with guilt. "No, this is wrong, but I've never felt this way before." Read one message from 6 months ago. "Derek makes me feel alive again." Lisa's responses were supportive but cautious. "Just be careful, Sarah. Marcus is a good guy. Don't throw away 15 years for excitement." "It's not just excitement," Sarah had replied. "It's like I've been sleepwalking through my marriage and Derek woke me up. We connect on every level. Emotionally, physically. I didn't even realize what I was missing." The messages continued over months, chronicling the progression of the affair. Sarah described romantic getaways disguised as business trips, elaborate lies about working late, and eventually her growing dissatisfaction with our marriage. "Marcus is a good husband on paper," she'd written 2 months ago. "Stable, reliable, financially secure, but there's no passion anymore. When Derek kisses me, I remember what it's like to feel desired, not just comfortable." The most recent exchange from just last week made my hand shake as I read it. "I think I might be pregnant," Sarah had messaged Lisa. "My God, with Derek's baby, yes. I don't know what to do. Marcus had a vasectomy years ago, so if I tell him I'm pregnant, he'll know something's wrong. You have to tell Derek. This changes everything. I know. But what if he doesn't want this? What if he runs? I can't lose everything. Should have thought about that before having an affair. I know you're right. I just need time to figure out how to handle this." Final message in the thread was timestamped the day before Sarah's pregnancy announcement. "I've decided to tell Marcus the pregnancy is a miracle. But the vasectomy failed. Derek doesn't need to know yet. If Marcus believes it's his, I can figure out the rest later." I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen in disbelief. Not only had Sarah been cheating on me for months, but she was actively planning to deceive me about the paternity of her child. She was prepared to let me raise Derek's baby, to build our entire future on a lie. While she decided whether or not to leave me for her lover, the calculated nature of her deception was what hurt most. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake made in passion. This was a deliberate, ongoing betrayal with backup plans and exit strategies. I saved screenshots of everything, creating a comprehensive digital dossier of my wife's infidelity. The engineer in me took satisfaction in the thoroughness of the evidence, while the husband in me died a little more with each new revelation. But I wasn't done investigating. I needed to know everything about Dorit Morrison before deciding how to proceed. Dorit Morrison's LinkedIn profile painted the picture of a man who had everything I'd once thought I had: success, charm, and apparently my wife's heart. His headshot showed a confident smile, steel gray eyes, and the kind of perfectly styled hair that suggested regular visits to expensive salons. His title read, Senior Vice President of Strategic Development at Morrison Marketing Group, which explained how he'd met Sarah and wielded the power to manipulate her work schedule. I scrolled through his professional history, noting the steady climb through various marketing firms over the past 15 years. He was 2 years younger than me at 40, with an MBA from Northwestern and a track record of high-profile client acquisitions. His recommendations section was filled with glowing testimonials about his innovative thinking and natural leadership abilities. The kind of man who commanded attention in boardrooms and apparently in hotel rooms. His personal details were more revealing. Recently divorced, according to a post from 8 months ago, right around the time his affair with Sarah Witz began. The divorce announcement was carefully crafted professional speak. Jennifer and I have decided to pursue separate paths while maintaining our commitment to co-parenting our twin daughters. No mention of infidelity, but the timing suggested. Derek had a pattern of destroying marriages. I found Jennifer Morrison's social media profiles through
Derek's
tagged photos. Her Facebook page told a different story than Derek's polished LinkedIn narrative. Posts from a year ago showed a woman in crisis, sharing articles about surviving betrayal and rebuilding after divorce. Her friends' supportive comments hinted at Derek's infidelity. You deserve so much better than someone who can't keep his vows. And the girls are lucky to have such a strong mother. One post from Jennifer particularly caught my attention. To the women who think they can have my husband, you're welcome to him. Just remember, if he'll cheat with you, he'll cheat on you. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. The post was dated 6 months ago, suggesting Jennifer knew about Derek's affair with Sarah specifically. I wondered if she'd tried to warn Sarah, or if Sarah had ignored the obvious red flags in favor of the excitement of forbidden romance. Derek's Instagram account was more personal, showcasing his lifestyle with artfully composed photos. Expensive. Restaurants, luxury vacations, high-end fitness clubs, wine tastings at exclusive venues. The man clearly enjoyed the finer things in life and had the income to support them. Several photos showed him with attractive women at various events, always tagged as colleagues or clients. But the body language suggested more intimate relationships. I cross-referenced the locations in Derek's photos with Sarah's timeline. The overlap was extensive and damning. The boutique hotel in Chicago where Derek had posted a business dinner photo matched the location where Sarah claimed to have attended her conference. The upscale steakhouse where Derek celebrated a client victory was the same restaurant, where Sarah said she'd grabbed a quick bite alone during a work trip, but it was Derek's interaction patterns that revealed his true character. His comments on female colleagues' posts were consistently flirtatious, walking the line between professional and inappropriate. He had a talent for making every woman feel special, unique, chosen. The classic behavior of a serial cheater who viewed conquest as a game. I found a local Business Journal article about Derek from 2 years ago, profiling him as one of the city's rising marketing stars. The piece described him as charismatic and driven, with an uncanny ability to identify what clients want before they know it themselves. The interviewer noted his magnetic personality and gift for making everyone in the room feel like the most important person there. Reading between the lines, Derek Morrison was a predator, charming, successful, and utterly without conscience when it came to pursuing what he wanted. Sarah had been just another conquest, another married woman drawn in by his practiced charm. An expensive lifestyle? The most disturbing discovery came through a reverse image search of one of Derek's photos. It led me to a dating app profile that was still active despite his relationship with Sarah. His profile described him as recently single and ready for adventure, with photos that were clearly recent. He was still actively seeking other women. While carrying on his affair with my wife, I delved deeper into public records. Finding Derek's divorce decree through the county clerk's website, the financial details were eye-opening. Derek was paying substantial alimony and child support, which suggested his disposable income for wooing married women might be more limited than his Instagram suggested. The divorce had also cost him half his assets, leaving him in a precarious financial position despite his impressive job title. This added a new dimension to his pursuit of Sarah. She wasn't just another conquest. She was a potential solution to his financial problems. Sarah had always been excellent with money, and our joint assets were substantial thanks to years of careful saving and successful investments. A man like Derek would see the appeal of a wealthy wife who was already emotionally invested in him. The final piece of the puzzle came through Derek's company directory. Senior VP, he had considerable power over Sarah's career trajectory. The affair wasn't just personal, it was a clear case of workplace sexual harassment, with Derek using his position to manipulate a subordinate employee. Sarah might have thought she was in control of the situation. Derek held all the cards professionally and knew exactly how to exploit that power dynamic. I leaned back in my chair. Having compiled a comprehensive profile of the man who was destroying my marriage, Derek Morrison wasn't just an unfaithful partner, he was a calculating predator who targeted vulnerable women, used his professional power to manipulate them, and discarded them when they became inconvenient. Sarah thought she was in love, but she was just the latest victim in a pattern of exploitation. The question now was how to use this information to protect myself, expose the truth about both Derek and Sarah's betrayal. I needed to verify my suspicions about Derek and Sarah's workplace relationship, so I decided to visit Morrison Marketing Group under the pretense of surprising Sarah with lunch. It was a risk she might see through the gesture, but I needed to observe their professional dynamic, engage how much their colleagues knew about the affair. Morrison Marketing Group occupied 3 floors of a gleaming downtown office building. The lobby was all marble and glass, designed to impress clients with the company's success and sophistication. I signed in with the security guard, explaining I was there to surprise my wife Sarah Thompson in the marketing department. The elevator ride to the 15th floor gave me time to rehearse my story. I was the loving husband, bringing lunch to his pregnant wife, excited about our miracle baby. The lie came easier than I'd expected, which probably said something troubling about my own capacity for deception. The marketing department reception area buzzed with activity. Young professionals hurried between offices with presentation boards and laptops, their voices carrying the urgent energy of deadline-driven work. Receptionists with purple hair and multiple piercings looked up as I approached. "Hi, I'm Marcus Thompson, Sarah's husband," I wanted to surprise her with lunch. Is she available? The receptionist's expression shifted slightly, a brief flicker of something that might have been discomfort. Oh, she's in a meeting right now. It might run long. Would you like me to let her know you're here? It's okay, I can wait. Maybe I could just put this in her office. I held up the bag from Sarah's favorite deli, playing the part of the considerate husband. Actually, I think she's working on site with a client today. The meeting isn't here in the building. Interesting. Sarah had told me she'd be in the office all day, working on budget reports. Oh, which client? Maybe I can catch her there instead. The receptionist looked increasingly uncomfortable. I'm not sure I should give out that information. Company policy, you know? Before I could respond, a woman in her 30s approached the reception desk. She had short blonde hair and wore a sharp business suit that suggested senior-level position. Her name tag read Amanda, account director. Is everything okay, Jess? She asked the receptionist, then noticed me. Oh, you must be Sarah's husband. I'm Amanda Wilson. Nice to meet you. I was hoping to surprise Sarah with lunch, but apparently she's with a client. Amanda's expression was carefully neutral, but I caught the quick glance she exchanged with the receptionist. Yes, she's been doing a lot of off-site work lately, very dedicated to her projects. The way she emphasized dedicated suggested multiple layers of meaning. I decided to probe further. She's been working such long hours recently. I barely see her anymore. Though I suppose that's normal when you're working closely with senior management, right? She mentions Derek Morrison quite a bit. The effect was immediate. Amanda's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing surprise and something that looked like sympathy. Derek's very hands-on with his team members. Sarah seems to really respect his leadership style. They work well together. They certainly spend a lot of time together, Amanda replied carefully. Sarah's been assigned to several of Derek's high-priority accounts recently. I sensed an opportunity. That's great for her career advancement. Though I have to admit, I worry about her working such late hours, especially now that she's pregnant. The word pregnant hit like a bomb in the reception area. Amanda's eyes widened, and the receptionist actually gasped audibly before covering her mouth. The silence stretched uncomfortably long. Pregnant, Amanda repeated slowly. Sarah's pregnant? We just found out. It's early still, but we're over the moon. A miracle baby really would have given up hope years ago. I watched their faces carefully, seeing confirmation of my worst suspicions in their shocked expressions. Amanda recovered first, though her smile was strained. That's wonderful news. Congratulations. I had no idea Sarah was trying to start a family. Well, we weren't exactly trying anymore, but sometimes life surprises you, right? I paused, then added casually. I'm sure Derek will be happy for her. They seem to have developed a good working relationship. The receptionist Jess made a small choking sound. Amanda shot her a warning look before turning back to me with forced brightness. I'm sure everyone will be thrilled for both of you. Sarah's very well liked here. We all want what's best for her. Subtext was clear. They knew about the affair. And they were struggling with how to react to news of a pregnancy that couldn't possibly be mine. I decided to push a little further. Has Derek mentioned whether Sarah will be traveling for any more conferences? I worry about her being away from home too much during the pregnancy. I'm not sure about Derek's travel plans for the team, Amanda stammered. You'd have to ask him directly. Maybe I will. Is he in today? The panic in Amanda's eyes was unmistakable. He's also off-site today. Big client presentation. Of course he was. It's probably at the same client meeting as Sarah. I smiled warmly, maintaining my facade of the oblivious husband. Well, I'll just leave this lunch for Sarah and let her know I stopped by. Could you make sure she gets it? Absolutely, Amanda said, taking the bag with obvious relief. I'll put it right on her desk. As I waited for the elevator, I heard urgent whispers from the reception area. Amanda was clearly calling someone, probably to warn them about my visit and the bombshell pregnancy announcement. I had no doubt that Derek would know about my surprise visit within minutes. On the ride down, I processed what I'd learned. The entire office knew about Sarah and Derek's affair. The shocked reactions to the pregnancy news confirmed that everyone understood the biological impossibility of the situation. Sarah had been lying not just to me, but potentially to Derek as well, about the timing and circumstances of her pregnancy. Back in the lobby, I approached the security desk with my friendliest smile. Excuse me, I'm trying to coordinate schedules with my wife. She works upstairs in marketing. Sarah Thompson. Could you tell me when she signed in this morning? The security guard consulted his log. Let me see, Thompson. I don't show her signing in today at all. Really? That's odd. Maybe she used a different entrance? No, sir. This is the only way into the building. All employees have to sign in here or use their key cards at this desk. So Sarah had lied about being at work today, just as she'd lied about everything else. She was probably with Derek right now, possibly discussing how to handle the pregnancy situation. Unaware that I knew the truth about everything, I thanked the security guard and walked back to my car, calling Sarah's number as I drove. It went straight to voicemail, which wasn't unusual for her during business hours. But given what I now knew, even that felt like another small deception. "Hey honey, it's me," I said after the beep. "I tried to surprise you with lunch at the office, but they said you were at a client meeting. Hope it's going well. Call me when you get a chance. Love you." The words tasted bitter, but I needed to maintain normalcy until I decided how to proceed. Sarah's coworkers had confirmed my suspicions about the affair, but they'd also revealed something else. I wasn't the only one being deceived. Derek might not know about the pregnancy yet, which gave me a potential advantage in how this situation unfolded. As I drove home, I realized that my visit to Morrison Marketing Group had accomplished more than just gathering intelligence. Had shown me that everyone in Sarah's professional life knew she was living a lie. They'd watched her deceive her husband while carrying on with her boss, and now they'd have to watch her try to pass off another man's child as mine. The thought of their pity for me, for Sarah, for the mess she'd created, was almost as painful as the betrayal itself. That evening, I sat in my office with a calendar, calculator, and the growing file of evidence I'd compiled. The engineer in me needed to construct a precise timeline of Sarah's pregnancy, cross-referencing it with her travel schedule and known opportunities for the affair. The mathematics of betrayal, reduced to dates and probabilities. Sarah had announced the pregnancy on Tuesday, claiming to be approximately 6 weeks along based on her missed period. Working backward, conception would have occurred around 8 weeks ago in mid-April. I opened her calendar app in my own. Records looking for the intersection of opportunity and deception. April 15th through 17th. Sarah's business conference in Chicago. She'd been excited about the trip, describing it as a major opportunity to present to potential clients and network with industry leaders. I'd encouraged her to go, even helped her pack, kissing her goodbye at the airport with genuine enthusiasm for her career advancement. Now I knew Derek had been at the same conference. His LinkedIn activity from that period showed posts about productive meetings in the Windy City and photos of expensive dinners tagged at restaurants Sarah had never mentioned visiting. The hotel she'd stayed at, the Palmer House Hilton, was the same one where Derek had posted a photo of the lobby's ornate ceiling. I pulled up the conference agenda from Sarah's email archives. The official sessions ended at 5 p.m. each day, leaving long evenings for networking. Sarah's credit card statements from that trip told a different story than her cheerful phone calls home. Room service charges at times when she'd told me she was having dinner with female colleagues, spa services she'd never mentioned, bar tabs that suggested intimate conversations over expensive wine. The timeline was damning, but not yet complete. I needed to account for other possibilities, other windows of opportunity for the affair that had created this pregnancy. April 22nd. Sarah worked late, claiming a client crisis required her immediate attention. I'd eaten dinner alone and fallen asleep before she came home. Her car had smelled faintly of cologne the next morning. Not my cologne. April 28th. Another emergency client meeting that lasted until after midnight. Sarah had come home energized, rather than exhausted, humming in the shower and more affectionate than she'd been in months. At the time, I'd attributed it to professional satisfaction. Now I understood the real source of her good mood. May 5th, weekend business trip to review potential office locations. Sarah had been gone from Saturday morning until Sunday evening, returning with stories about touring office buildings and meeting with commercial real estate agents. Her credit card showed charges at romantic restaurants and a boutique hotel that catered to couples rather than business travelers. The pattern was clear and devastating. Sarah and Derek had been conducting their affair with increasing frequency and boldness, using work as cover for romantic getaways. The pregnancy could have resulted from any of these encounters, but the Chicago conference seemed most likely given the extended time period and the intimacy suggested by their shared hotel. I created a detailed spreadsheet, color-coding dates by likelihood and cross-referencing them with Derek's social media activity and travel schedule. The correlation was perfect. Every one of Sarah's mysterious work obligations coincided with Derek's presence in the same city, often at the same hotels and restaurants. But there was another element to consider: Sarah's cycle tracking. She'd been meticulous about monitoring her fertility during our years of trying to conceive, using apps and charts to identify her most fertile days. Those habits had continued even after my vasectomy, partly from routine and partly because her doctor recommended tracking for general health awareness. I accessed her period tracking app, which she'd never thought to hide from me. The data showed her last period ending on April 10th, which meant she would have been at peak fertility during the Chicago conference. The timing wasn't coincidental. Sarah knew exactly when she was most likely to conceive, and she'd chosen to spend those crucial days with Derek rather than her husband. The calculation was precise and heartbreaking. Sarah had deliberately chosen the optimal time to create a child with her lover, then returned home to maintain the pretense of our marriage while planning to deceive me about the baby's paternity. I sat back in my chair, staring at the spreadsheet. That reduced my wife's betrayal to data points and probabilities. 15 years of marriage condensed into a timeline of lies and calculated deception. The woman I'd trusted with my heart, my future, my financial security, had been systematically destroying our life together while I remained blissfully unaware. But perhaps the most painful realization was how thoroughly she'd planned this deception. The pregnancy wasn't an accident or a moment of passion. It was the deliberate result of choosing her most fertile period to spend with another man. She'd wanted to get pregnant with Derek's child, then planned to trick me into believing it was mine. The mathematical precision of her betrayal was almost as devastating as the emotional impact. Sarah had turned conceptions, something we'd struggled with 4 years, something that had nearly broken our marriage, into a weapon against me. She'd used her knowledge of fertility, gained through our shared struggles, to create another man's child while ensuring I would believe in the impossible. I printed the timeline and added it to my growing file of evidence. Whatever came next, I now had proof not just of Sarah's affair, but of the calculated nature of her deception. This wasn't a crime of passion, it was premeditated fraud on the most intimate possible level. The question remaining was whether Derek knew about Sarah's fertility timing, or if he was as much a victim of her manipulation as I was. Either way, both of our lives were about to change dramatically once the truth came out. Dr. Patterson called me personally with the results of my follow-up sperm analysis, his voice carrying the weight of delivering life-changing news. I was sitting in my car outside a coffee shop, having needed to get away from the house where Sarah was excitedly researching baby cribs. "Marcus, I have your results. I want to be absolutely clear about what we're seeing here." His tone was gentle, but unflinching. "Your sperm count is 0. It's not low, not reduced, completely absent. The vasectomy remains 100% effective. There is no possibility, none whatsoever, that you could father a child naturally." I closed my eyes, feeling the last thread of hope snap. Some part of me had still been clinging to the possibility of a medical miracle, a case study that would defy the odds and preserve my marriage. That hope was now officially dead. "I know this isn't what you wanted to hear," Dr. Patterson continued. "In 25 years of practice, I've never seen a vasectomy reversal naturally after this length of time. The vas deferens don't spontaneously reconnect after a decade. What your wife is suggesting is medically impossible." "How certain are you?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "It's absolutely certain. We ran the analysis twice to be sure. Your semen contains no viable sperm. If your wife is pregnant, you are not the biological father." The finality of his words settled over me like a burial shroud. There would be no miraculous explanations, no medical anomalies to save my marriage. Sarah was carrying another man's child and lying to my face about it. "Dr. Patterson, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. If I were to pursue legal action, divorce proceedings, custody disputes, would you be willing to testify about these results?" There was a pause before he responded. "Marcus, I understand you're in an incredibly difficult situation. Yes, if legally compelled, I would testify truthfully about your medical condition. The evidence is irrefutable. In the original vasectomy records, are they detailed enough to establish the timeline?" "Completely. We have comprehensive documentation from the initial consultation through all follow-up appointments. The records clearly show that you've been sterile for over 10 years, with multiple confirmatory tests. Any competent attorney would be able to use this evidence effectively." I thanked Dr. Patterson and ended the call, sitting in the coffee shop parking lot as my world finished crumbling around me. The medical evidence was ironclad. Sarah's pregnancy was proof positive of her infidelity, and her claims about vasectomy failure were deliberate lies designed to manipulate me into accepting responsibility for another man's child. My phone buzzed. with a text from Sarah, "Just scheduled our first ultrasound for next Tuesday. Can you get off work early to come with me? I want you there when we hear our baby's heartbeat for the first time." The casual cruelty of the message, the heart emoji, the possessive "our baby," the assumption that I would participate in her charade, made my hands shake with rage. She was planning to drag me to a doctor's appointment to celebrate the pregnancy. That proved her betrayal, expecting me to play the role of excited father-to-be while she perpetuated her lies. I drove to a nearby park and sat on a bench, watching families play with their children. Fathers pushing toddlers on swings, mothers chasing giggling kids across the playground, the natural joy of parenthood that Sarah was trying to steal from me through deception. I wondered how many of these fathers knew with certainty that their children were biologically theirs, and how many might be unknowingly raising another man's offspring. The legal implications were staggering. If I said nothing and allowed Sarah to proceed with her deception, I could be legally responsible for child support even after the truth came out. Some states presumed paternity for husbands of pregnant wives, regardless of biological reality. I needed to protect myself financially and legally before Sarah's lies became legally binding. But there was also the emotional consideration. This child, innocent of its parents' deceptions, would need stability and support. Derek might abandon Sarah once he learned about the pregnancy, leaving her to raise the child alone. As angry as I was with Sarah, I didn't wish hardship on an innocent baby, yet I couldn't allow myself to be manipulated into a lifetime of supporting another man's child while being deceived about its paternity. The betrayal was too profound, the lies too systematic. For any possibility of reconciliation, I called Dr. Patterson's office back and requested copies of all my medical records related to the vasectomy and recent testing. I'll need them for legal purposes, I told Janet, his nurse. Of course, Marcus. Dr. Patterson mentioned you might need documentation. We'll have everything ready for pickup tomorrow morning. My next call was to Rebecca Mills, a divorce attorney whose name I'd found through an online search. Her assistant scheduled an emergency consultation for the following day. Mrs. Mills specializes in high-set divorces involving infidelity, the assistant explained. She needs you to bring all relevant documentation. As I drove home, I realized I was moving from the investigation phase into action. The medical evidence had eliminated any possibility of doubt or reconciliation. Sarah's betrayal was complete and documented, her lies exposed by science itself. The hardest part would be maintaining the pretense until I was ready to act. Sarah would continue planning for our baby, making appointments, and sharing her excitement. While I gathered the evidence needed to protect myself legally, I would have to smile and nod and play the part of the devoted husband while building the case that would end our marriage. That evening, Sar curled up beside me on the couch, showing me ultrasound photos from pregnancy websites and talking about the miracle of early fetal development. She seemed genuinely happy, glowing with the kind of joy that should have been ours to share. Instead, it felt like attending my own funeral while everyone else celebrated. Living with Sarah while knowing the truth about her pregnancy was like performing in a play, where only I knew the script was a tragedy. She bubbled with maternal excitement, chattering about nursery themes and baby names while I nodded and smiled, my face muscles aching from the effort of maintaining the charade. Tuesday morning arrived with Sarah, practically vibrating with anticipation for our first prenatal appointment. She'd chosen Dr. Maria Santos, the same obstetrician who had guided us through our miscarriages years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me returning to the doctor who had witnessed our fertility struggles, now to celebrate a pregnancy that proved my wife's infidelity. "I can barely contain myself," Sarah said as she checked her appearance in the hallway mirror one final time. She wore a flowing green dress that complemented her eyes, and she'd styled her hair in loose waves. She looked beautiful, radiant with the glow everyone talks about in pregnant women. After all these years of disappointment, we're finally going to see our baby on the ultrasound. Our baby. The possessive pronoun felt like a knife twisting in my chest every time she used it. Dr. Santos's office hadn't changed much in the 10 years since our last visit. The same soothing beige walls, the same inspirational quotes about the miracle of birth, the same magazines featuring happy families that had once mocked our childlessness. The waiting room was full of expectant couples, their hands intertwined, their faces bright with anticipation. "Thompson, appointment for 2:30. Sarah announced to the receptionist, her voice carrying across the waiting room. Several other couples glanced over, smiling at her obvious excitement. We sat in the corner, Sarah's leg bouncing with nervous energy while she flipped through a pregnancy magazine. She pointed out articles about nursery decorating and baby-proofing, asking my opinion on everything from crib safety standards to the merits of cloth versus disposable diapers. I responded appropriately, playing my part while mentally calculating how much longer I could maintain this performance. "I keep thinking about what Dr. Santos will say when we explain about the vasectomy," Sarah said quietly, leaning closer to me. "She'd probably want to run additional tests to understand how it happened. Maybe we'll end up in medical journals as a miracle case." The casual way she discussed perpetuating the lie to our doctor made my stomach turn. Sarah was prepared to involve medical professionals in her deception, potentially affecting the quality of care she received, all to maintain her fiction about the baby's paternity. "Sarah Thompson?" Nurse called from the doorway. We followed. The nurse down the familiar hallway to an examination room that smelled of antiseptic and hope. Sarah changed into a hospital gown while I sat in the chair beside the examination table, the same chair where I'd held her hand through so many disappointments. Dr. Santos entered with the same warm smile I remembered, her dark hair now streaked with silver, but her manner unchanged. "Sarah, Marcus, it's wonderful to see you both again. Congratulations on this exciting news." "Thank you, Dr. Santos. We can barely believe it ourselves," Sarah replied, settling back on the examination table. "It's been such a long journey to get here. I have to say, I was surprised when I saw your appointment on my schedule. Last time we spoke, you decided to pursue a permanent solution to avoid further pregnancy loss. Marcus, you had a vasectomy, correct?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. Dr. Santos was going to ask the questions that would expose Sarah's lies, and I was curious to see how my wife would handle the medical scrutiny. "That was about 10 years ago," Sarah said smoothly. "We thought we were done trying, but apparently nature had other plans. We think the vasectomy might have failed or reversed itself somehow." Dr. Santos frowned, consulting her tablet. "That would be extremely unusual. Vasectomy failure rates are very low, and spontaneous reversal after 10 years is virtually unheard of. Have you had recent fertility testing to confirm recanalization?" The question hung in the air like a sword. Sarah glanced at me, clearly expecting me to support her story. "We haven't had time for additional testing yet," she said. "We wanted to confirm the pregnancy first. Of course. Well, let's start with the ultrasound and see how the baby is developing. Then we can discuss the unusual circumstances and what additional testing might be appropriate." Dr. Santos prepared the ultrasound equipment while Sarah lifted her gown to expose her still flat abdomen. The monitor flickered to life, showing the grainy black and white images I remembered from our previous losses. This time, instead of hope, I felt only dread. "There we are," Dr. Santos said, pointing to a small shape on the screen. "Based on your last menstrual period, you're measuring about 6 weeks and 2 days. Right on track." Sarah gripped my hand tightly, tears streaming down her face as she stared at the monitor. "Is that really our baby?" "That's your baby," Dr. Santos confirmed, adjusting the equipment to get a clearer view. "The heartbeat is strong and regular. Everything looks exactly as it should for this stage of development." I watched the tiny form on the screen, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Anger at Sarah's deception, sadness for the child who would grow up surrounded by lies, and an unexpected protective instinct toward this innocent life caught between its parents' failures. "The due date based on these measurements would be around January 15th, Dr. Santos continued. "Does that align with your calculations?" Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "That sounds right. We've been so focused on the miracle of it all, we haven't done much mathematical planning yet, but I had done the math. January 15th meant conception around April 15th, exactly when Sarah was in Chicago with Derek. The due date was itself evidence of her betrayal, though Dr. Santos had no way of knowing that. "Now, about the vasectomy situation," Dr. Santos said, turning to face us both. "I'd strongly recommend that Marcus get updated fertility testing before we proceed much further. If there has been spontaneous recanalization, we need to understand the implications for future family planning. And honestly, given how rare this would be, I'd want to rule out other explanations." The doctor was too professional to voice her suspicions directly, but her meaning was clear. She knew that vasectomy failure after 10 years was virtually impossible, and she was giving us the opportunity to be honest about the real circumstances of the pregnancy. "What kind of other explanations?" Sarah asked, her voice slightly strained. "Well, sometimes patients aren't completely accurate about their medical history, either intentionally or due to misunderstanding. Procedure wasn't successful, though your husband's follow-up testing should have caught that. There are various scenarios we'd want to investigate. I realized Dr. Santos was being incredibly diplomatic while basically saying she didn't believe our story. She'd seen enough cases to recognize the signs of a pregnancy that didn't match the claimed circumstances. We'll definitely get that testing done, I said, speaking for the first time since entering the room. We want to understand exactly what happened. Sarah squeezed my hand gratefully, thinking I was supporting her narrative. In reality, I was planning to use Dr. Santos's recommendation to formally document my continued sterility, creating additional evidence for the divorce proceedings. As we scheduled follow-up appointments and Sarah collected ultrasound photos, I marveled at her ability to maintain the performance. She genuinely seemed to believe her own lies, or at least had convinced herself that they were justified. The baby was real. The pregnancy was progressing normally. She was glowing with maternal happiness while sitting next to the husband she was systematically deceiving. Walking to the car afterward, Sarah clutched the ultrasound photos like precious treasures. "I can't wait to frame these," she said. "Our first baby pictures. After everything we've been through, it feels like a miracle." I nodded and smiled, playing my part while mentally preparing for the conversation I would have with Dr. Santos privately. She suspected the truth. She would be a crucial witness when the time came to expose Sarah's lies. I hired private investigator Janet Chen on a gray Wednesday morning, meeting her at a diner across town where no one would recognize either of us. Janet came highly recommended by the divorce attorney I'd consulted. With 20 years of experience documenting marital infidelity for court proceedings, she was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 5'4" with graying black hair pulled into a practical ponytail. But her handshake was firm, her eyes sharp and assessing, and her questions revealed a methodical mind that missed no details. "Tell me about your wife's routine," she said, pulling out a leather portfolio and digital recorder. "Work schedule, social activities. Any patterns you've noticed in her behavior?" I outlined Sarah's supposed work schedule versus her actual activities, the discrepancies I'd discovered in her location data, and the timeline of her affair with Derek Morrison. Janet took notes in shorthand, occasionally asking clarifying questions about specific dates or locations. "You've done impressive investigative work already," she said after I finished. "Most clients come to me with suspicions, but no concrete evidence. You've essentially mapped out the entire affair." "I'm an engineer. I believe in documentation and proof." "Good. That mentality will serve you well in divorce proceedings. Now, what specific evidence do you need me to gather?" I explained that while I had digital evidence of the affair, I needed photographic proof that would hold up in court. Pictures of Sarah and Derek together in compromising situations, documentation of them entering and leaving hotels, evidence that would be irrefutable even to the most skeptical judge. "That's standard adultery documentation," Janet said. "About the pregnancy situation, it adds complexity to the case. I have medical records proving I'm sterile. The pregnancy is biological proof of her infidelity. But I need to document whether Derek knows about the baby and how they plan to handle the situation." Janet nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting angle. We'll need to surveil both subjects separately and together. We'll also want to document any communications between them about the pregnancy." She quoted her rates higher than I'd expected, but reasonable given the complexity of the case. More importantly, she outlined a comprehensive surveillance plan that would document every aspect of Sarah and Derek's relationship over the next 2 weeks. "I'll start tomorrow," she said. "Your wife typically leaves for work at what time?" 8:15. "She drives a silver Honda Accord, license plate JKL 9847, and Derek Morrison. Black BMW sedan, drives to work from the Riverside apartment complex where he's been living since his divorce. I'll send you his license plate number and photos." Janet explained her methodology. She would follow both Sarah and Derek from their homes to document their daily activities, paying special attention to any deviations from normal work routines. She had equipment capable of photographing license plates, building entrances, and faces clearly even at significant distances. "How intrusive will this be?" I asked. "I don't want Sarah to know she's being watched until I'm ready to confront her. 20 years of experience means I know how to be invisible. Your wife won't have any idea she's under surveillance. The evidence will be admissible in court and comprehensive enough to eliminate any doubt about the affair." I paid Janet's retainer fee and provided her with all the background information she'd need. Sarah's photo, work address, Derek's information, their typical meeting places, and the timeline of suspicious activities. She assured me she'd have preliminary results within 48 hours. That afternoon, I met with Rebecca Mills, the divorce attorney I'd researched. Her office occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of the city where my marriage was disintegrating. Rebecca herself was impressive mid-50s, platinum blonde hair, designer suit, and the kind of confidence that came from years of winning difficult cases. "Mr. Thompson, I've reviewed the preliminary information you provided. This is quite an unusual situation," she said, gesturing for me to sit across from her mahogany desk. "Proving adultery through medical evidence of impossible paternity is actually stronger than most infidelity cases I handle." She explained the legal framework around adultery in our state, the impact on divorce settlements, and the implications of the pregnancy for any potential custody arrangements. Since the child wasn't biologically mine, I wouldn't have legal obligations for support, but the situation was complex enough to require careful legal maneuvering. "The key will be timing," Rebecca explained. "We need to document everything before your wife can claim the affair ended or that she's reconciled with you. Once you confront her with the evidence, the dynamic changes completely. How long should I wait before revealing what I know?" "Give the private investigator 2 weeks to document the ongoing affair. We'll also need to secure your assets and prepare all the paperwork. I'd recommend confronting your wife only after we're fully prepared for immediate filing." Rebecca outlined a strategy for protecting my financial interests, documenting my premarital assets, and ensuring that Sarah's infidelity would be reflected in any settlement. She also discussed the emotional challenges of maintaining the pretense. While gathering evidence, the hardest part for most clients is continuing to live with their spouse while knowing about the betrayal. It requires enormous self-control, but it's essential for building an airtight case. I scheduled regular check-ins with both Janet and Rebecca, creating a support system for the most difficult period of my life. Every morning, I would wake up beside my unfaithful wife, kiss her goodbye as she left for her supposed job, then coordinate with the team documenting her lies. That evening, Sarah showed me baby name websites on her laptop, excitedly discussing whether we should find out the gender or wait for a surprise. She'd created lists of potential names, complete with meaning and family significance for each option. "I keep thinking about legacy," she said, curled against my side on the couch. "How this baby will carry on both our family names, combining the best of both our histories." The irony was devastating. She was talking about family legacy while carrying another man's child, planning to give it my name while knowing it had no genetic connection to me. Every word was another lie, another layer of deception designed to trap me in her fantasy. "Have you thought about what we'll tell people about the miracle pregnancy?" I asked carefully. "Some people might have questions about the timing." Sarah's expression flickered briefly, a moment of uncertainty before her practiced smile returned. "We'll just tell them that love finds a way, that we never gave up hope, even when the doctors said it was impossible." People love stories about medical miracles. Even her lies had been rehearsed. Sarah had prepared explanations for every question, responses for every skeptical inquiry. She'd turned our fertility struggles into cover for her infidelity, weaponizing our most painful experiences to hide her betrayal. But Janet Chen was now following her every move, and Rebecca Mills was preparing the legal framework for justice. Sarah's carefully constructed deception was about to collide with documented reality, and the impact would destroy everything she thought she'd built. Janet Chen's first surveillance report arrived via encrypted email on Friday morning, containing photos that shattered any remaining illusions about my marriage. The images were crystal clear, professionally composed, and utterly damning. Sarah and Derek entering the Marriott downtown at 11:47 a.m. on Thursday, her hand in his, both dressed in business attire, but clearly not there for a meeting. Sarah emerging from the same hotel at 3:20 p.m., her hair slightly mussed, her lipstick gone. Her expression satisfied in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Derek following 10 minutes later, checking his phone with the casual confidence of a man whose lunch break had gone exactly as planned. The accompanying surveillance notes documented their routine. Derek would text Sarah around 10 a.m. She would leave her office claiming a client lunch, and they would meet at various hotels around the city. Never the same location twice. Always paying in cash. always maintaining the pretense of separate arrivals and departures. But the most devastating photos showed them in Derek's BMW outside a medical building, Sarah holding what appeared to be ultrasound photos, while Derek studied them intently. The timestamp indicated this was taken on Wednesday afternoon, the day after our appointment with Dr. Santos. Sarah had shared our baby's first photos with her lover before showing them to anyone else. Janet's notes added crucial context. Subject: 1. Sarah appeared emotional during conversation in vehicle. Subject: to Derek seemed surprised but not displeased by content of documents. Physical contact suggested intimate relationship continuing despite pregnancy revelation. So Derek now knew about the baby, and his reaction suggested he was taking responsibility for the pregnancy. This added a new dimension to my divorce strategy. Wasn't just Sarah's affair partner anymore, he was the biological father of her child, potentially willing to support them both. I called Rebecca Mills immediately after reviewing the report. "This is excellent evidence," she said after I emailed her the photos. "Clear documentation of ongoing adultery, and the pregnancy discussion establishes paternity. We can move forward with divorce proceedings whenever you're ready." Out. "Confront her soon," I said. "This pretense is killing me, and I need to move forward with my life." "I understand, but timing is crucial. Sarah's baby shower is scheduled for next weekend, correct? That presents a unique opportunity." Rebecca explained her strategy. Confronting Sarah publicly, in front of family and friends, would maximize the impact and minimize her ability to spin the situation. The baby shower would gather everyone who had been congratulating us on our miracle pregnancy, creating the perfect audience for revealing the truth. "It sounds cruel," Rebecca acknowledged, "but your wife has been cruel to you for months. She's planning to celebrate her infidelity in front of your entire social circle while expecting you to play the grateful husband. Into a moment of accountability is actually quite appropriate. The plan required careful coordination. I would attend the baby shower normally, participating in the festivities until the moment was right. Then, during the gift opening ceremony, I would present Sarah with the vasectomy medical records, wrapped like a present, with a bow. The medical documents are irrefutable proof that the pregnancy couldn't be yours," Rebecca explained. "Presenting them publicly will force Sarah to either confess immediately or attempt to maintain lies that everyone will recognize as impossible."
Oh.
"What about the legal implications of a public confrontation? We'll have divorce papers ready for immediate filing. The shock value will prevent Sarah from destroying evidence or hiding assets. By the time she recovers from the initial revelation, we'll have already secured your financial position." I spent the weekend reviewing Janet's additional surveillance reports while Sarah excitedly prepared for her baby shower. She'd invited 30 people, friends, family members, co-workers, all of whom would witness the end of our marriage. She fluttered around the house, decorating and planning menu items, radiating joy about the celebration of her deception. "I can't believe how many people are coming," she said Saturday evening, checking her guest list for the dozenth time. "Everyone's so excited about our miracle baby. Your sister called it the most romantic story ever, how love conquered medical impossibility." My sister, my parents, Sarah's family, our co-workers who knew the truth but had said nothing. Derek's colleagues who had watched the affair unfold. All of them would be there to witness Sarah's humiliation and the revelation of her lies. "It's going to be beautiful," I agreed, helping her arrange gift bags. "Very memorable." Janet delivered her final report on Wednesday, containing 2 weeks of comprehensive documentation. Sarah and Derek had met 11 times during the surveillance. Period. Always at different hotels, always during supposed work hours. The photos showed increasingly intimate behavior, hand-holding, progressing to kissing, to obvious physical affection that left no doubt about their relationship. Most significantly, Janet had captured them apartment hunting together on Tuesday afternoon. Derek's lease was expiring, and they'd toured 3 different 2-bedroom units in upscale neighborhoods, clearly planning to move in together. One photo showed Sarah holding apartment brochures while Derek's arm encircled her waist, both of them smiling with the happiness of couples planning their future. Subject 1 appears to be planning permanent relocation, with Subject 2, Janet's notes concluded, relationship has progressed beyond casual affair to serious partnership with long-term domestic intentions. So Sarah wasn't just cheating. She was planning to leave me for Derek. Probably after the baby was born, and she'd secured maximum financial benefit from our divorce. The baby shower wasn't just a celebration of her pregnancy. It was her farewell party disguised as a tribute to our marriage. Rebecca reviewed the complete evidence package and declared it bulletproof. I've rarely seen a case this thoroughly documented. Your wife won't be able to deny anything, and the medical evidence makes her claims about miraculous conception legally impossible to maintain. She presented me with a folder containing divorce papers, asset protection documents, and a restraining order application in case Sarah became volatile when confronted. Everything was prepared for immediate filing the moment I revealed the truth. Are you ready for this? Rebecca asked during our final preparation meeting. Once you present those medical records publicly, there's no going back. Your marriage will be over, and your life will change completely. I thought about the hospital bracelet from my vasectomy, about the promises Sarah and I had made to each other, about the years of trust she'd systematically destroyed. I thought about the child she was carrying, innocent of her deceptions, but forever a symbol of her betrayal. I'm ready, I said. It's time for the truth. That evening, Sarah tried on 3 different dresses for the baby shower, asking my opinion about which one made her look most radiant. She settled on a flowing blue dress that complemented her pregnancy glow, styling her hair in soft curls and applying makeup with extra care. I want to look perfect for our big day, she said, admiring herself in the mirror. This is going to be the most important celebration of our lives. She was right about that, though not in the way she imagined. The baby shower would indeed be the most important day of our lives, the day our marriage officially ended, and the truth about Sarah's betrayal became public knowledge. I went to bed that night knowing it would be my last night as Sarah's husband. Tomorrow she would learn that her carefully constructed web of lies had been discovered, documented, and was about to be exposed to everyone she cared about. The woman sleeping peacefully beside me, her hand resting on her growing belly, had no idea that her world was about to collapse completely. The morning of the baby shower, I made one final discovery that changed everything I thought I knew about Sarah's capacity for deception. While she was at the salon getting her hair done, I decided to search her personal belongings one last time, looking for anything I might have missed that could be relevant to the divorce proceedings. Hidden in the back of her jewelry box, beneath layers of necklaces and earrings she rarely wore, I found a small leather journal I'd never seen before. The pages were filled with Sarah's familiar handwriting, documenting her inner thoughts about the affair, the pregnancy, and her plans for our future. The entries began 8 months ago. Right around the time I now knew her affair with Derek had started, March 15th, met the most interesting man today at the Morrison Group quarterly meeting, Derek Morrison, Senior VP. There's something about him that's different from Marcus. More confident, more worldly. He asked intelligent questions about my presentation and actually listened to my answers. When was the last time Marcus really listened to me? March 22nd, Derek invited me for coffee to discuss the Henderson account. We talked for 3 hours. He has this way of making me feel like the most fascinating woman in the room. I haven't felt that way in years. Is it wrong that I'm looking forward to seeing him again? April 3rd, I can't stop thinking about Derek. He's everything Marcus isn't. Spontaneous, passionate, ambitious. When he looks at me, I feel like a woman instead of just a wife. Marcus treats me like a roommate with benefits. We've been married so long that we've forgotten how to see each other as individuals. The progression was heartbreaking to read, chronicling Sarah's growing dissatisfaction with our marriage and increasing infatuation with Derek. But the later entries revealed something far more calculated than a simple affair. April 12th, Derek and I are attending the Chicago conference together. I know what will probably happen, and I want it to. I've been tracking my cycle, and I'll be at peak fertility. Part of me wonders what would happen if I got pregnant. Would Derek leave his wife for me? Would it force me to finally leave Marcus? 18th Chicago was incredible. Derek is an amazing lover, passionate, attentive, everything I've been missing. And yes, we were careless about protection. I'm not sure I care. Maybe it's time for a dramatic change in my life. May 20th. I'm pregnant. I know it's Derek's baby, and I know exactly when it happened. Now I have to decide what to do. Derek doesn't know yet. Marcus will assume it's his, which gives me time to figure out my next move. This baby could be my ticket to a completely new life. May 25th told Marcus about the pregnancy today. He looked shocked, which makes sense given the vasectomy, but he seems to believe my story about medical miracles. I almost feel guilty lying to him, but this is my chance for happiness. If Derek wants this baby in me, I can have the family I've always dreamed of with a man who actually appreciates me. June 2nd, showed Derek the ultrasound photos today. He was surprised but not upset. He's thinking about what this means for us. I told him I haven't told Marcus the truth yet, that I need time to plan my exit strategy. Derek understands that I can't just abandon my marriage without protecting myself financially. The entries continued, revealing Sarah's elaborate planning for her departure from our marriage. She'd been researching divorce laws, calculating asset division, and planning how to maximize her financial settlement while minimizing Derek's obligations. The baby wasn't just proof of her infidelity, it was part of her strategy for starting a new life. But the most devastating entry was dated. Just 3 days ago, June 20th, the baby shower is this weekend. All our friends and family will be there, celebrating what they think is Marcus and my miracle baby. I feel guilty about the deception, but I've come too far to turn back now. Derek and I are planning to move in together after the baby is born. I'll file for divorce once I'm settled in the new place and have secured my financial position. Marcus will never know the truth about the baby's paternity unless I choose to tell him. This secret will give me power over both men. Derek will support us because it's his child, and Marcus will pay support because he'll legally be considered the father. I can have the best of both worlds. I sat in our bedroom, holding the journal that documented my wife's systematic destruction of our marriage. Feeling nauseous with the realization of how thoroughly I'd been manipulated, Sarah hadn't just had an affair, she'd orchestrated an elaborate scheme to use the pregnancy as leverage for financial gain. While transitioning to a new relationship, she'd planned to collect support from both Derek and me, using the legal presumption of paternity to trap me into payments while building a new life with her lover. The baby shower wasn't a celebration, it was the final performance in her elaborate deception before revealing her true intentions. The journal entries also revealed that Sarah had been documenting everything for potential use in divorce proceedings. She'd been building her own case against me, noting every perceived slight and disappointment in our marriage to justify her infidelity and strengthen her position in court. But Sarah had made a crucial mistake. She'd documented her own fraud. In writing, creating irrefutable evidence of her deliberate deception about the baby's paternity. Her own words would destroy any sympathy she might have received from family and friends, and they would be devastating evidence in divorce court. Photographed every page of the journal, adding this final piece to my comprehensive file of evidence. Then I carefully returned it to its hiding place, ensuring Sarah would have no idea I'd discovered her most private thoughts. As I prepared for the baby shower that would end our marriage, I realized that Sarah's capacity for deception exceeded anything I'd imagined. She wasn't just an unfaithful wife. She was a calculating manipulator who had turned our most intimate struggles into weapons against me. The woman I'd trusted with my heart, my home, my future, had been systematically planning my destruction while I remained completely unaware. But her own words would be her downfall. In documenting her deceptions, Sarah had created the evidence that would expose her lies and protect me from her schemes. The baby shower would be her final performance, but it would end with a revelation that would shatter everything she'd worked to build. I dressed carefully for the occasion, choosing a suit that projected confidence and authority. Today, I would stop being the victim of Sarah's deceptions and start being the architect of justice. Her journal had given me the final piece of the puzzle. Now I was ready to reveal the complete picture to everyone who mattered in our lives. This baby shower was everything Sarah had dreamed it would be. Our backyard was decorated with pastel balloons and streamers, round tables covered in yellow tablecloths with centerpieces of baby's breath and miniature rattles. 30 guests mingled on the lawn, sipping mimosas and celebrating what they believed was our miracle pregnancy. Sarah glowed in her blue dress, accepting congratulations and well wishes from friends and family who had followed our fertility journey. For years, my mother held her hands, tears of joy in her eyes as she talked about finally becoming a grandmother. Sarah's sister Lisa, who I now knew had been complicit in the affairs, smiled and nodded while Sarah described her pregnancy symptoms and due date calculations. "It's such a beautiful love story," my Aunt Carol said during lunch, raising her glass in a toast. "Proof that miracles really do happen when you never give up hope." Everyone raised their glasses, beaming at Sarah and me as we sat at the head table like the perfect expectant couple. Sarah squeezed my hand, her eyes bright with tears that I once would have interpreted as joy, but now recognized as guilt and fear. Derek hadn't been invited, of course, but his presence hung over the celebration like a shadow only I could see. Every time someone mentioned the miracle of conception, every time someone praised our perseverance through fertility struggles, I thought about the real father of Sarah's child and the elaborate deception being celebrated by our closest friends and family. "Time for presents," Sarah's mother announced after dessert, directing everyone to gather around the gift table. We'd set up under our oak tree. Sarah settled into the white wicker chair we decorated with ribbons and boughs. Surrounded by carefully wrapped packages from her registry, she looked radiant and happy, playing her part perfectly as I handed her gifts one by one. Baby clothes, bottles, receiving blankets, a high-end stroller from my parents. Each present brought squeals of delight and grateful hugs. I maintained my performance as the devoted husband, smiling and thanking guests for their generosity, while my heart pounded with anticipation. The moment I'd been planning for weeks was approaching, and there would be no turning back once I revealed the truth. "This one's from Marcus," Sarah announced, reaching for the elegantly wrapped box I'd placed beside her chair. It was the right size for a baby book or photo album, tied with a silver ribbon that matched the color scheme she'd chosen. The conversations around us quieted as everyone focused on what the expectant father had chosen for his miracle baby. Sarah's fingers worked at the ribbon, her smile bright with curiosity about what thoughtful gift I'd selected for our child. "You shouldn't have spent so much," she said, though her tone suggested she hoped I had. "You're already doing so much to get ready for the baby." I stood behind her chair, my hands resting on her shoulders as she lifted the lid of the box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, were the medical records from my vasectomy consultation, surgery, and follow-up appointments spanning 10 years. Dr. Patterson's latest fertility test results were on top. The key finding highlighted in yellow: sperm count 0, no viable sperm present. Sarah's face went white as she lifted the first document. Her hands began to shake as she read the surgical notes describing the bilateral vasectomy performed a decade ago, with photographic documentation of the completely severed vas deferens. "What is this?" she whispered, though her tone suggested she understood exactly what she was looking at. "Medical records," I said clearly, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent gathering. "Documentation proving that I've been completely sterile for 10 years. Evidence that your pregnancy couldn't possibly be the miracle you've been claiming it is." The silence was deafening. 30 people sat frozen, processing what they'd just witnessed. Sarah continued staring at the documents, her face cycling through emotion, shock, fear, anger, and finally resignation. "Marcus, what are you doing?" my mother asked, her voice confused and alarmed. "I'm revealing the truth that Sarah has been hiding from all of us," I replied, looking around at the faces of friends and family who had celebrated our supposed miracle. "Sarah is pregnant, but not with my child. She's been having an affair with her boss, Derek Morrison, and she's been lying to everyone about the paternity." Sarah finally looked up from the medical records, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus, please don't do this here." "Where else should I do it, Sarah?" "In private, so you can continue lying to everyone who loves us, so you can keep accepting." "Congratulations for a pregnancy that proves your infidelity." Lisa, Sarah's sister, stood up abruptly. "I think maybe we should all know," I interrupted. "Everyone deserves to know the truth. You especially, Lisa, since you've been helping Sarah plan her deception." The accusation hung in the air like a bomb. Lisa's face flushed red as she realized I knew about her complicity in the affair.
Oh.
Several guests looked between us, confusion and concern written on their faces. My father spoke up from his seat near the gift table. "Son, what exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying that Sarah has been cheating on me for 8 months with Derek Morrison, her supervisor at Morrison Marketing Group. The baby she's carrying was conceived during a business conference in Chicago, where they spent 3 days together in the same hotel. The medical records prove it's impossible for me to be the father." Sarah stood up suddenly, the medical documents scattering across the ground. "Stop it. Just stop. You're embarrassing yourself and humiliating me in front of everyone we care about." "I'm embarrassing myself." My voice rose despite my intention to remain calm. "You've been carrying another man's child, while accepting congratulations from our family and friends for our miracle pregnancy. You've been planning to let me raise this baby while knowing I'm not the father. And you think I'm the one who should be embarrassed?" The gathering erupted in shocked murmurs. My mother was crying, Sarah's parents looked stunned, and several friends were pulling out their phones, probably to text others about the dramatic revelation they were witnessing. "The pregnancy is real," Sarah said desperately, her hands protecting her stomach. "The baby is real." We can work through this, Marcus. We can go to counseling. We can figure out how to move forward. Move forward. I laughed bitterly. Sarah, I've read your journal. I know you've been planning to leave me after the baby is born. I know you and Derek have been apartment hunting together. I know you plan to collect support from both of us while lying about the baby's paternity. Sarah's face went completely pale. You went through my private things? Your private? Things that documented your systematic deception of your husband? Yes, I did. And I found evidence of a conspiracy to commit fraud that goes far beyond a simple affair. I pulled out printed copies of Sarah's journal entries and Janet Chen's surveillance photos, placing them on the gift table for everyone to see. The images of Sarah and Derek entering hotels, sharing intimate meals, shopping for apartments together, evidence of a relationship that had been hidden from everyone present. This isn't just about infidelity, I continued, addressing the gathering rather than Sarah. This is about a calculated plan to deceive me about the paternity of her child for financial gain. Sarah documented everything in her own handwriting, including her strategy for collecting support from both men. Sarah looked around at the faces of her friends and family, seeing shock, disappointment, and judgment reflected back at her. The celebration of her pregnancy had transformed into a tribunal examining her character and choices. I never meant for it to happen this way, she said finally, her voice breaking. Derek and I fell in love. It wasn't planned. It wasn't calculated. It just happened. Planning to get pregnant during your most fertile period wasn't calculated, I countered. Researching divorce laws and asset division wasn't planned. Lying to me about miraculous conception while planning your exit strategy wasn't deliberate. The evidence was overwhelming, and Sarah knew it. She looked at the medical records scattered at her feet, the photos documenting her affair, the journal entries in her own handwriting that revealed her true intentions. In front of everyone who mattered in her life, the baby shower that was supposed to celebrate our love and commitment had become the stage for revealing the truth about betrayal, manipulation, and fraud. And as our guests sat in stunned silence, processing the end of what they'd believed was a beautiful love story, I felt the weight of deception finally lifting from my shoulders. The aftermath of the baby shower confrontation was swift and devastating for everyone involved. Within hours, the story had spread through our entire social and professional network. By Monday morning, Sarah's affair and pregnancy deception were common knowledge at Morrison Marketing Group. Derek's apartment complex? In every corner of our suburban community. Sarah's first instinct was to call Derek for support, but he'd already heard about the public exposure through mutual colleagues who had attended the shower. According to the private investigator I'd kept on retainer, Derek's reaction was to immediately distance himself from the situation. He changed his phone number, avoided the office, and by Tuesday had submitted his resignation to Morrison Marketing Group. Subject 2 appears to be abandoning Subject 1 now that the affair is public. Knowledge, Janet Chen reported during our Wednesday meeting. He's been seen loading belongings into his vehicle and has terminated his apartment lease. Strong indication he's leaving the city entirely. Derek's abandonment hit Sarah harder than the public humiliation. She'd gambled everything on there. Relationship, believing he would support her through the divorce and help raise their child. Instead, faced with the reality of public scandal and financial responsibility, he'd chosen to flee rather than face the consequences of their affair. Sarah moved back in with her parents after I changed the locks on her house and filed for emergency separation. Her mother called me repeatedly, pleading for reconciliation and claiming that pregnancy hormones had caused Sarah to make poor decisions. Her father, a practical man who'd always respected my work ethic and honesty, was less sympathetic to his daughter's situation. She made her bed, he told me during a difficult phone conversation. I raised her better than this, Marcus. I'm sorry for what she's put you through. The legal proceedings moved quickly once Rebecca Mills filed the divorce papers. Sarah's documented infidelity, combined with the medical evidence proving fraudulent paternity claims, created an open and shut case that her attorney advised her to settle rather than contest. The prenuptial agreement we'd signed years earlier protected most of my premarital assets, and Sarah's affair eliminated any claim to alimony. Your wife's journal entries were particularly damaging to her case, Rebecca explained during one of our meetings. Documenting premeditated deception about paternity constitutes fraud, which voids many of the standard protections she might have claimed. Sarah attempted one final manipulation, claiming that stress from the divorce was endangering the pregnancy and requesting financial support for medical expenses. Rebecca countered with documentation proving that Derek Morrison was the biological father and therefore responsible for any pregnancy-related costs. The most painful aspect of the divorce wasn't the legal proceedings or asset division, it was watching the complete destruction of the person I'd once loved. Sarah had built her entire identity around being the wronged wife who'd finally found happiness, and the exposure of her deceptions had left her with nothing. She'd lost her husband, her lover, her job. Morrison Marketing Group terminated her employment and the respect of everyone in her social circle. 3 months after the baby shower, I received a call from Dr. Santos, Sarah's obstetrician, requesting medical records for the divorce proceedings. Sarah had apparently tried to claim that I was the biological father for insurance purposes, necessitating official documentation of my sterility. I have to say, Mr. Thompson, I suspected something was amiss during your appointment, Dr. Santos admitted. Vasectomy failure after 10 years is virtually impossible. But your wife seemed so convinced of her story that I thought perhaps there had been some medical error in your original procedure. There was no error, I confirmed. Sarah knew exactly what she was doing. I'm sorry you went through this deception. It's unfortunate when patients involve medical professionals in their personal dishonesty. The baby was born in January. A healthy girl that Sarah named Emma Grace. I felt no connection to the child. She was simply the physical evidence of my ex-wife's betrayal, but I didn't wish her any harm. Sarah was raising her alone, Derek having disappeared completely and abandoned any responsibility for his daughter. Friends and family gradually reached out to me as the initial shock of the divorce wore off. Many apologized for not seeing the signs of Sarah's deception, while others admitted they'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't wanted to interfere in our marriage. My sister called 6 months after the divorce was finalized. I keep thinking about that baby shower, she said. The way you presented those medical records so calmly, like you'd been planning it for weeks. How long did you know? About a month, I admitted. I investigated everything thoroughly before deciding how to handle the situation. Weren't you tempted to just confront her privately? Maybe try to work things out? I considered the question carefully. Sarah didn't just have an affair. She orchestrated an elaborate fraud designed to trap me into raising another man's child while she transitioned to a new relationship. That level of deception doesn't deserve private handling or second chances. But the baby Emma, she's innocent in all this. You're right, she is. But I'm not her father, biologically or legally. Derek Morrison is responsible for supporting his daughter, and Sarah is responsible for the choices that led to her current situation. A year after the divorce, I received an unexpected letter from Sarah. She'd moved to another state with Emma, working as a freelance marketing consultant, and struggling financially without Derek's support or my income. The letter was an apology mixed with a request for financial assistance, claiming that Emma deserved support from the man she'd believed was her father for the first months of her existence. I discussed the letter with Rebecca Mills, who confirmed that I had no legal obligation to provide support for a child that wasn't biologically mine. Your ex-wife is attempting to manipulate your emotions to gain financial advantage, she explained. This is consistent with the deceptive behavior patterns we documented during the divorce. I didn't respond to Sarah's letter. The woman who had systematically deceived me about the most fundamental aspects of our marriage had forfeited any claim to my sympathy or support. Her difficulties raising Derek's child were the natural consequences of her choices, not my responsibility to solve. The divorce had taken everything Sarah thought she'd built her marriage, her lover, her financial security, her social standing, and left her with only the child that represented her betrayal. Derek had abandoned both Sarah and Emma, proving that his interest had been in the excitement of an affair rather than genuine love or commitment to family. Justice, I realized, didn't always require elaborate revenge or dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it was simply allowing people to experience the natural consequences of their choices. Watching the lies they'd built their lives on collapse under the weight of truth, Sarah had gambled everything on a deception that was mathematically impossible to maintain, and she'd lost everything when the truth inevitably emerged. The baby shower confrontation had simply accelerated the inevitable collapse of her carefully constructed fraud, ensuring that I wasn't trapped in her web of lies when it all fell apart. 2 years after the divorce, I stood in the kitchen of my new house, looking out at the garden I'd planted and the life I'd rebuilt from the ashes of Sarah's betrayal. The house was smaller than the one Sarah and I had shared, It was entirely no memories of lies, no ghosts of deception. No reminders of the marriage that had been built on a foundation of manipulation. The keys to this house represented more than just property ownership. They symbolized my complete independence from the toxic relationship that had nearly destroyed my ability to trust. Every room reflected my choices, my values, my vision for the future. The home office where I worked on engineering projects. The workshop where I'd taken up woodworking as therapy. The guest room where my sister stayed when she visited spaces. It's defined by honesty and authenticity rather than performance and pretense. Dating had been challenging at first. The experience with Sarah had left me hypervigilant about red flags, quick to analyze inconsistencies in stories, slow to trust romantic partners, gone to therapy to process the trauma of systematic deception, learning to distinguish between reasonable caution and paranoid suspicion. Betrayal of that magnitude changes how you view relationships. Dr. Catherine Wells, my therapist, had explained during one of our sessions. The challenge is learning to trust again without becoming so guarded that you can't form genuine connections. I dated casually for over a year before meeting Jennifer Kim, a fellow engineer who worked for a competing firm. Jennifer was direct, honest, and refreshingly transparent about her thoughts and feelings. She knew my history with Saratha. Story had become somewhat legendary in our professional circles, and appreciated my careful approach to developing trust. I actually find it reassuring that you're cautious, she'd told me during one of our early conversations. It means you value honesty and take relationships seriously. Too many people rush into commitments without really knowing their partners, and I had been together for 8 months now, building a relationship based on transparency and mutual respect. She'd met my family, I'd met hers, and we'd discussed the possibility of moving in together. But I was taking things slowly, ensuring that every step was based on genuine compatibility, rather than loneliness or the need to prove I could trust again. The financial settlement from my divorce had left me in excellent shape, Sarah's documented. Fraud had resulted in her receiving minimal assets, while my careful documentation had protected my investments and retirement accounts. I'd used some of the money to buy the new house outright, eliminating mortgage payments and creating financial independence that felt liberating after years of joint accounts and shared financial decisions my career had actually benefited from. The divorce. Without the emotional drain of managing Sarah's deceptions and the constant stress of living with lies, my work performance had improved dramatically. I'd been promoted to senior project manager and was leading a team designing sustainable infrastructure for urban development. The focus and clarity that came from honest living had enhanced every aspect of my professional life. The most unexpected benefit of exposing Sarah's affair was the respect I'd gained from friends and family. Many people had admitted they'd suspected something was wrong with our marriage, but hadn't known how to address it. A willingness to face the truth, even when it was painful, had strengthened relationships with people who valued integrity. You handled that situation with more grace than most people would have managed, my father had told me during a recent conversation. It took courage to expose the truth publicly, but it was the right thing to do. Sarah was counting on your politeness and discretion to protect her lies. I occasionally wondered about Sarah and Emma, though I'd made no effort to maintain contact. Through mutual acquaintances, I'd heard that Sarah had eventually found work with a small marketing firm in another state, earning significantly less than she had at Morrison Marketing Group. Derek had never resumed contact with her or acknowledged his daughter. Leaving Sarah to raise Emma as a single mother, the child would be walking now, starting to talk, beginning to explore the world around her. She would grow up knowing that her biological father had abandoned her, that the man her mother had tried to trick into raising her had chosen to walk away when the truth emerged. Sarah's deceptions had consequences that extended far beyond our marriage, affecting an innocent child who would eventually learn about the circumstances of her conception. I felt no guilt about refusing to support Emma financially or emotionally. The child deserved a stable, loving environment, but creating that environment was Sarah's responsibility, not mine. I had no more obligation to Derek's daughter than I would to any other child born from affairs I'd had no part in creating. Jennifer and I had discussed the possibility of having children together someday, though we both understood the complexity of that conversation given my history. My vasectomy was irreversible, which meant any future children would require medical intervention or adoption. But the conversation itself represented progress. I was able to envision a future that included family without the shadow of Sarah's betrayal. It's the best revenge against someone who tried to manipulate you. Dr. Wells had observed, is building a life so authentic and fulfilling that their deceptions become irrelevant to your happiness. She was right. Sarah's affair and pregnancy fraud had been devastating. But they'd also freed me from a marriage built on lies and opened the door to relationships based on honesty. The pain of betrayal had been temporary. The freedom from deception was permanent. As I prepared dinner in my quiet kitchen, I reflected on the journey from discovering Sarah's pregnancy announcement to building this new life. The engineering mindset that had helped me investigate her lies had also guided my recovery, systematic problem-solving, evidence-based decision-making, and careful construction of a stronger foundation for the future. The keys to my new house weren't just metal objects. They represented the power of truth over deception, the value of integrity over convenience, and the possibility of genuine happiness after surviving profound betrayal. I'd learned that some people are capable of elaborate deceptions that can fool even those who love them most, but I'd also learned that the truth always emerges eventually. And justice often comes through simply allowing people to experience the consequences of their choices. The marriage that had ended with vasectomy records presented at a baby shower had taught me the difference between love and manipulation, between partnership and exploitation. Now, with Jennifer's honest affection and my own hard-won wisdom, I was building something real, a relationship based on truth rather than lies, trust rather than suspicion, an authentic connection rather than performance. Sarah's pregnancy had ended our marriage, but it had also set me free to find the authentic love I deserved.